Hey y'all, welcome back. We just finished our first video introducing why programming, why Java. In this video, we're going to be going on to section 2, our first class. Now, what does that mean? We'll quickly find out as we talk about Java classes. All right, let's get to it. So, our first class. Well, what is a class? In Java, a class is used to define a type. It's okay if you don't know exactly what a type is right now. As we program, as we start getting into it, and as we see some code, you'll get a better understanding of it. Now, we use these classes as templates to create an object. Think of a cookie cutter. If you've ever made sugar cookies using a cookie cutter, you use that cookie cutter as a template, right? And you plop it on cookie dough. You cut out the outline of the cookie cutter, and then you use that same template, that same cookie cutter on multiple cookies. Another example is, for example, think of the minions. I know right now something that's very popular is a gentle minion, but think back to Gru and those yellow minions with those blue overalls. Some of them look like each other, right? Some of them have 2 eyes, some of them have 1 eyes, some of them are probably called Kevin. Shout out to all the Kevins out there. But Gru, he uses a template to create these minions. So just like Gru can use a template and clone all these minions, we can use a class and we can define this class as a template to create many different objects that we want to create. All right, that's a lot of verbiage, a lot of terminology. Again, you don't have to understand all of this right now. Just be introduced to the idea of a class and using a class as a template. That's the takeaway. So right here is a template for a class called My First Hello World. Now, this is not code you actually ever see in the real world. This is just for learning purposes. So you're going to see right here, we have the public word, we have the class, and then we have our class name, which is My First Hello World. And you might be wondering, why is it named like that? Why is the M in my capitalized? Why is F, H, and W capitalized? And then right there, we see what are called curly brackets, or sometimes I refer to them as braces. Okay. We'll talk more about this template and what each part means. So that public word that you saw there, it's what we call a reserved keyword. We'll explain more about this later, but essentially a reserved keyword is something Java reserves for a specific meaning. So you're not allowed to use this in any other context. You also see the word class. This is also a reserved keyword. It says, hey, we're going to create a class. And then we have, right after that keyword class, we have our class name. For our class, we called it My First Hello World. Now again, you see this weird spelling convention. Why is every word capitalized and why are there no spaces? Well, in Java, we have to follow what is called convention. So, just like in everyday world, we have conventions as well. Typically, when you see someone, you introduce yourself. Like, hi, my name is Mr. Wong. And to follow the typical convention of being polite, you typically ask, what's your name? Or you introduce yourself, right? Or if you're bringing a friend to a party and this friend doesn't know any other friends or these other people at the party, well, conventional niceness is introducing your friend and having them tag along with you as you introduce them to your other friends. So just like these social conventions, we also have programming conventions. This one is how to write a class name convention. You start with a capital letter, there are no spaces, and every word is capitalized. Now you might be thinking, wait, Mr. Wong, are you making this up? And I assure you, I don't have the power to create this stuff. I don't have the power to make these rules up. If you look at that link right there and you follow it, you'll come across a link by Oracle, and they basically are you can think of them as the creators and the people who established the Java programming language. but they're the ones that have this as a convention. All right, I'm just a messenger. Blame them. All right, let's go ahead and go back to that class. So we have those two reserved keywords, public and class, and the word after class is your class name. Now, everything inside of the class My First Hello World is going to go inside those two braces. You're going to notice that they face a certain direction. So we call the first one an opening brace. Okay, it's opening up. We call the second one a closing brace. It closes the class. And whatever we want inside of the class, we put inside of those two braces. Something you're going to see is something called the main method. Now, I'm not going to even attempt to explain each and everything right here, okay? Don't worry right now about the public, the static, the void, the main, the parentheses, the string bracket, args, all that stuff. You will learn about all of these later. All you need to do, and I'll give this to you, is understand that this main method is going to be inside of the braces for the class. Okay? Notice how it's inside the opening and closing braces. And also, the main method is after the opening brace and before the closing brace. This means the main method is inside of this class. Okay? Notice how this main method also has an open brace and a closed brace. Braces come in pairs, if you haven't noticed already. For every open brace, there must be and should be a closing brace. Now, again, the purpose of the main method is typically to just test the class in which it is located. Think of it as a launch-off point, and we will see a demonstration of this later on. Okay, so for this part, make sure you just understand that this main method goes inside of the class braces, open and closed braces. All right, and now inside of the main method braces, the open and closed brace, we have something called system.out.print hello world. Okay, so you're gonna see a lot of this stuff like system, what's the dot, what's the out, why there parentheses, why there quotations, right? But this line of code, system.out.print hello world, it's the only thing that's different between this slide and the previous slide. Again, notice how this line of code is inside of the braces of the main method. Also, notice how at the end of the system.out.print, there's a semicolon. We'll talk more about this later, but in programming, we end our commands with a semicolon. Just like in English, we end our sentences with a dot, period. Right. Now, note that I said we end commands with a semicolon, not every line of code. Because if you look up there, the class name and the main method, notice that those lines of code do not end with semicolons, but the command does. Again, I just want you to be aware of these things. You don't need to memorize it right now. But what we're going to do right now is let's go ahead and practice running our code. So, we're going to go ahead and use an online IDE. So I'm going to go ahead and open one up. I'm going to search online Java IDE. Okay. And I'm going to use the JDoodle one. And you're going to see something like this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see better. And I'm going to go ahead and point out a couple of things. Notice they have public, class, and then they have a class name. Their class name is different from our class name. That's okay for now. They also have that main method that I was talking to you about earlier. And then they have these int x. We'll talk about that in later on. And some code. Let's go ahead and delete all of this stuff. This should look a little familiar. Okay. Now let's go ahead and add that system.out.print parentheses quotation, hello world. Go ahead, pause the video, search for an online Java IDE, and make sure your program looks like this. Capitalization does matter, so make sure that system, that S is capitalized, .out.print, parentheses, quotation, hello world, semicolon. Pause the video and complete this. All right, now that you have this done, let's go ahead and run our first program. So down here, you're going to see an execute button. You can think of that execute button as run. You also notice the play. It just means play, run the code. So it says running the code and hello world. Awesome. So this program from lines 1 through 5, what it did was it printed out hello world. Now, what I want you to do is try to modify the code to print out another message. Give it a try. Programming is all about taking something you learn and trying to fiddle around with it to do something a little bit different from what you've been given or spoon-fed by a teacher. So go ahead and pause this video and change that message from hello world to print out something else. Maybe, wow, I'm so excited. This is my favorite class. Or, Mr. Wong, you're a great teacher. Or, I love my parents. Okay, so pause the video, try it, and just so you know, it's okay if it doesn't quite work. In the next video, we're going to talk more about hello world, strings, and those quotation marks and printing out other messages. All right, see you then.